Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. Maple Street had never been the kind of neighborhood to draw headlines. Tucked quietly between a small grocery store and a stretch of older homes lined with tall oak trees, it was a place where people still waved to each other from their driveways. Porch lights glowed like soft beacons along the sidewalks, illuminating trimmed hedges and parked cars that hadn't moved in days. For decades, residents said the worst thing that ever happened there was a mailbox run over by a delivery van. That was before the night everything changed. The person who later became the focus of the investigation had lived on Maple Street for several years, quiet, friendly, predictable in their routines. Neighbors recalled seeing them each evening just after 9 p.m., taking a walk around the block while listening to music. It was something that brought them peace after long workdays, and the neighborhood had always felt safe enough for it. On the night of the disappearance, several people reported seeing the individual pass by their homes, earbuds in place, head slightly down, unaware that anything was out of the ordinary. But while Maple Street looked peaceful, there were details, small, almost invisible, that only made sense in hindsight. A neighbor noted that a car they didn't recognize had been parked near the intersection earlier that day. Another resident reported hearing what sounded like a car door shut around 9:20 p.m., though they assumed it was nothing unusual. Someone else remembered seeing movement near the empty house on the corner, a property that had been vacant for months. None of these details meant much on their own, until later. The timeline of events only came together the next morning, when a resident across the street checked their security system after hearing police were canvassing the neighborhood. Their camera, mounted under the porch light, captured part of Maple Street with a clear view of the sidewalk. The homeowner, expecting to see nothing out of the ordinary, instead found footage that would become central to the case. At 9:13 p.m., the missing individual appeared in frame, walking at a steady pace. The streetlights cast a bluish reflection on the wet pavement, giving the scene an eerie stillness. The individual glanced briefly over their shoulder, not in panic, but as if sensing something behind them. A few seconds later, a dark-colored car rolled slowly into the edge of the frame. It didn't stop. It didn't speed up. It simply moved past at a crawl, almost matching the walker's pace before continuing down the street. Investigators later confirmed that the same vehicle passed by again in the final minutes of the footage. This time, it moved even slower, hugging the curb. The tail lights flickered as if the driver lightly tapped the brakes, watching something or someone. The victim, still visible on the sidewalk, appeared slightly more aware now, turning their head again, this time for longer. Whether they noticed the car or simply felt uneasy wasn't clear from the footage. But it was the last confirmed sighting of them. Within 7 minutes, they were gone. When officers arrived during the early morning hours, they had little more than those final images to go on. The street was quiet, no signs of struggle, no abandoned belongings, no obvious evidence left behind. What they did have was a narrow timeline, a mysterious vehicle, and a growing fear spreading through the Maple Street community. For the first time in decades, the neighborhood that once felt predictably calm was now at the center of a case no one could have imagined. The morning after the disappearance, Maple Street woke up to an unusual quiet. A few neighbors noticed the missing person's porch light still on, something they rarely left overnight. Others saw the police cruiser parked near the intersection just after 7 a.m., its engine running, its presence signaling that something had gone very wrong. By the time word spread to the rest of the street, officers had already begun knocking on doors, asking the same question over and over. When was the last time you saw them? Detectives from the local precinct arrived shortly after, setting up a small command post near the corner lot. They began by collecting the most basic facts: when the individual left home, who saw them last, and whether anything seemed out of place. The first hours of an investigation are critical, and detectives knew that any delay could reduce the chances of finding someone alive. They retraced the route the missing person usually walked, noting every camera, every lamppost, and every blind spot where someone could disappear without being seen. One of the first breakthroughs came from the same house, whose CCTV captured the final 7 minutes. Investigators collected the footage directly from the homeowner, securing it as evidence and enhancing it frame by frame. They noted the mysterious vehicle's slow circling, the odd brake light flicker, and the subject's subtle change in body language. Crime analysts reviewed the footage repeatedly, adjusting the brightness and zooming in to capture anything useful: stickers on the windshield, the shape of the headlights, or the pattern of the wheels. But the camera angle was limited, and the car never fully entered the center of the frame. Meanwhile, officers canvassed the rest of the neighborhood's cameras. Maple Street had a mixture of older homes with outdated systems and newer houses equipped with modern high-definition security setups. A few residents turned over footage showing ordinary activity: pets wandering outside, cars driving by, porch lights clicking on. But one camera near the far end of the block captured something investigators didn't expect: the same dark-colored vehicle passing by minutes before the disappearance. The timestamp aligned almost perfectly with the timeline from the original footage, confirming that the car wasn't a coincidence. Detectives attempted to trace the vehicle based on its general model, but without a clear license plate, the task became significantly harder. They compiled a list of similar cars registered in the area, cross-referencing them with known addresses, recent visitors, delivery workers, and residents with prior complaints or suspicious activity reports. Nothing matched cleanly. The investigation seemed to widen instead of narrow. As the day progressed, police expanded the search radius. Officers walked through wooded areas behind the neighborhood, checked drainage paths, and followed trails leading toward a nearby park. Volunteers joined as evening approached, flashlights sweeping through bushes and abandoned lots. But there were no footprints, no discarded items, and no obvious signs of a struggle. It was as if the missing person had vanished in the space between two camera angles. By nightfall, Maple Street felt different. Porch lights stayed on later than usual. Residents locked their doors earlier, checked their security systems twice, and grouped together to share what they knew or feared. For the first time, a neighborhood built on quiet predictability felt something collective and unfamiliar: uncertainty. And investigators knew they needed a new lead soon, because cases like this could go cold fast. And when they do, they rarely reopen themselves. The investigation shifted dramatically on the third day, when detectives decided to focus all attention on the one element that appeared again and again: the dark-colored vehicle seen twice in the CCTV footage. Up until this point, officers had treated it as a potential lead, important, but not yet central. Now, with no physical evidence, no activity on the missing person's phone, and no eyewitness reports of a confrontation, the car became the investigation's primary anchor. It was the one thing that didn't fit the peaceful rhythm of Maple Street. Detectives began the day by visiting the home where the second security camera had captured the vehicle. This footage, though grainier, offered a slightly different angle. It showed the car passing the neighborhood about 12 minutes before the disappearance. The timestamp confirmed that the same vehicle had lingered in the area longer than what could be explained as someone passing through. The movement looked deliberate, almost cautious. The car slowed near the vacant house on the corner, paused, then continued toward Maple Street with its headlights dimmed. Something officers found immediately concerning. Crime analysts enhanced the footage again, adjusting exposure and isolating specific frames. They believed the vehicle was most likely a mid-2000 sedan, possibly charcoal or dark blue, though the nighttime lighting made the exact color difficult to confirm. The biggest challenge remained the license plate, which was either obstructed, dirty, or covered by glare. Still, detectives noticed something extremely important: a dent on the rear left side of the bumper. It was small, but distinctive, exactly the kind of detail that could make the difference in a search involving thousands of similar cars. Later that afternoon, investigators expanded their search outward into neighboring streets. They reviewed traffic cameras, business surveillance systems, and residential doorbell recordings. A grocery store half a mile away caught a blurry image of what looked like the same vehicle turning into a side road shortly after 9:20 p.m., the approximate time of the disappearance. The camera didn't capture the plate, but the dent, the shape of the taillights, and the behavior of the driver were all consistent. Officers began knocking on doors across multiple blocks, asking residents if they recognized the vehicle or had seen it recently. A few people mentioned a similar car parked on the opposite side of a neighborhood days earlier. One person claimed they saw a car matching the description idling near the park just after sunset the night of the disappearance, but they hadn't thought anything of it until detectives arrived. Another neighbor remembered hearing a car door slam around the same time the missing person was last seen on camera, followed by the sound of tires rolling across gravel. Again, nothing conclusive, but every detail painted the same unsettling picture. The vehicle didn't belong there, yet it kept coming back. Detectives compiled a list of all dark sedans registered within a 15-mile radius that had similar body features. The list was long, but one entry caught their attention. A vehicle recently involved in a minor traffic collision that resulted in damage to its left rear panel. Officers visited the registered address, only to discover the car wasn't there. According to the owner, it had been sold a few weeks earlier through a private listing. No paperwork, no full name, no clear record of who bought it. The owner described the buyer as quiet, kept a hood up, paid cash. That was all they remembered. As night approached, investigators set up surveillance at various entry and exit points of Maple Street. They hoped the vehicle might return. It wasn't uncommon for offenders to revisit areas connected to their crimes, either out of fear, confidence, or curiosity. For several hours, nothing unusual happened. But around 11:40 p.m., one of the officers stationed near the opposite end of the neighborhood noticed a car driving slowly past, headlights dimmed, matching the same silhouette seen on the CCTV footage. Before they could pursue it, the vehicle turned abruptly down a side road and disappeared into the darkness. For detectives, this moment changed the course of the investigation. The vehicle wasn't just a lead, it was now the centerpiece of the case. Someone had been watching Maple Street. Someone had come back. And whoever was behind the wheel of that car might have been the last person to see the missing resident alive.